So welcome to Read and Write's Hidden Treasures Part 2, or Hidden Gems, which makes up part of the DSA series of webinars. My name is Jackie Prentice. I'm the training manager here at Texthelp. I work within the customer care team of the education division. If you want to get in touch with me, or if there's anything DSA related, that is the email address that you should use for that. So it's dsa@texthelp.com. Let's look at what we're going to do today. What I've considered is some of the aspects of Read and Write maybe that people don't look at most often. But before we get into that, I want to go through some important aspects. If you're an assessor and you recommend Read and Write for Windows, for example, it doesn't matter if you say Read and Write for Windows. All you need to say is Read and Write, because the actual license itself covers for whatever device that the student wants to get it on. So they can get it on, yes, absolutely, their laptop and put it on Windows or whatever. But for example, maybe they have an iPad, so they can get Read and Write for iPad. So just be conscious of that. And the idea with that really is that we want to provide the support of Read and Write wherever a student actually wants or indeed needs to be using or working in. So that's why the importance of that Read and Write. I'm really pleased with that, because I know certainly over the years, and I've been with Texthelp now, gosh, it's going on, I think this is going to be my 22nd year actually coming up. But anyway, you know, it used to be a case that if you wanted Read and Write, you would say Read and Write for Windows, and you got it for Read and Write for Windows. But if the person happened to have a Mac or something like that there, they would actually have to buy another license. That's no longer the case. The license for Read and Write covers every device. For today, I'm actually going to be, of course, working mostly in Windows, but if you want and indeed need any sort of support in regards to using any of those platforms, please do let me know. And indeed, at the very end of this webinar, I'll signpost you to other support that you can access. But as you know, Read and Write is often recommended for various different needs, such as dyslexia, dyspraxia, visual stress, to name but a few. One of the things that Texthelp have provided, which you may be aware of, but I'm going to go over again, is that we have produced what we call the Assessor's Guide. I'm just going to quickly click on this just for anybody who maybe hasn't seen it yet. So we've prepared this to really go through the different needs that a student may have. And then beside each learning need, we will indicate how, and that gives you a little heads up actually to Equatio. Let me scroll back up here. Trying to remember where I was. It'll go through, for example, Read and Write, and how the specific support that's in Read and Write can help with that specific learning need. So that's a really important document for you to keep in mind, and indeed, certainly for any new assessors among you, that might be one of the first documents that you might want to refer to whenever you're starting to look at Read and Write. And as I've already said, at the very end, towards the ends, we start then going into Equatio as well, which is our piece of software to help with maths. Okay, so that's the Assessor's Guide. So bear that in mind in regards to how Read and Write can help support those specific individual needs. Obviously, with the name of the software, it's very obvious where Read and Write is indeed recommended. It's to support anybody who has difficulty with reading and or writing. So indeed, for that reason, tools such as text-to-speech and indeed prediction can be the most commonly demonstrated aspects of the software. However, there are some what I'm going to call hidden gems in the software, and I picked out 5 gems in my previous webinar series, and because of the feedback in regards to that series, what I've done is picked out another 5. Now, these might be tools that maybe might not get as much of the limelight, but can be a massive support for the student, or indeed, and certainly in regards to the 5 tools that I'm going to show you today, it might be how you actually use the tool can maybe make a massive difference, and maybe hasn't been as explored as maybe others. So let's lead us off, and the first tool that I'm going to look at is prediction. Prediction is used to help students construct their sentences. It can actually predict the word ahead and gives them the resource to actually help them construct their sentences, and of course help with those spellings, because a lot of the students might have difficulties with that. But one aspect of prediction that I think not a lot of people are conscious of or aware of is the ability to actually create word banks. Now, the prediction in Read and Write is really, really powerful because it learns the student's style of writing. Now, that's important because, of course, all of your students are studying different subjects and will have different vocabulary. But if you were to give a student the software today, for example, it's going to take a little while for prediction to start to actually get tailored more towards the type of words that they need to use for that particular topic. So that's why the ability to create word banks is really, really important. And it means then that it will learn their style and the vocabulary that they need much, much quicker. So let me show you this very, very quickly. So I'm just going to minimize my presentation out of the way. So I'm going to use a Word document here. It happens to be on glaciers, but of course, as you all know, it could be absolutely any subject whatsoever. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight the text, and importantly, I'm going to click on copy. Okay, so remember to click on copy. Now I'm going to click on prediction. Whenever I click on prediction, this little panel will appear. And what seems to me to a certain degree hidden possibly is this little, I believe they call this a hamburger, although it's a very, very narrow hamburger. But underneath the 3 dots is our word banks. So I'm going to click on word banks. And it pops up, and this will show you all of the different word banks that are included with Read and Write or can be added to Read and Write. So if there's a little tick beside it means that it's actually being used at that moment. But I can take any of those off or indeed add them as we go. But of course, what I want to do is actually create my own word bank based on this text that I need for glaciers. So I'm going to click on create, and it opens up this panel. Then where it says add your text, I'm going to click in there, right click and paste. So there's all of the text. Now I give it a name, so that's pretty straightforward, isn't it? Because we know what it is, so we'll call it glaciers. Then I can assign it a category. Now we have a number of categories in here. Most of them will suit for most of the subjects maybe that a student is studying, but there is other just in case. But for this one, of course, we're going to assign it to geography, and then simply click on create. Then whenever I get this panel appearing, it says word bank has been created and is ready for use. So I just click on OK and get that out of the way. Indeed, I'll close the different word banks, and you can see straight away it's actually picking up straight away the type of text that I'm going to be needing to use within any of the documents. Sorry, it's reading over me here as I speak. But any of the text then that I'm going to create based on glaciers. So that is my tool, and it's tool number 6, quite simply because, of course, in previous, which you may actually have watched or indeed attended, of my previous hidden gems. So gem number 6, yes, is prediction, but more specifically is that ability to actually learn in text from existing work, so that it gives it a bit of a head start, as it were. Right, moving on then to gem number 7, and that is scanning. Now, for anybody who attended the last webinar schedule, you'll go, "I had scanning last time," and indeed it did. Yeah, so I've cheated a little bit. But in the last series, what I showed you was how a student can actually use the camera on their phones to scan, which indeed is very, very important, of course. But this time, what I'm going to do is highlight the ability to use the scanning in Read and Write to convert a PDF document to a Microsoft Word document. Okay, that can be very, very necessary for students because, of course, if you consider how much information students get in PDF format, if they want to be able to quote it or be able to get it into some sort of shape where they can find it easier to memorize. It'd be much, much easier, of course, if it was in a Microsoft Word document. So again, let me show you how to do that. So I'm going to, again, just exit out of this presentation. Right, so here's our scan. So I'm going to click on it. I've got nothing actually attached to my computer at the moment. That's okay, because what I'm going to do, and as I've said, is actually convert a PDF document into a Microsoft Word document instead. So I'm going to click on Scan from File. So I'm going to select that option, and then quite simply it's select the file. So I'm going to select my file. So from here then they just simply navigate to what PDF document it is that they want to use. So just excuse me while I find the one that I want to use. And let's see, we're doing Sensing Earth and Environment Dynamics. And I'll open that. So there's 17 pages in this PDF. I'm going to narrow that down a little bit just for quickness, just for this presentation. So I'll make it page 11 to page 13. Now here I can indeed keep it as a PDF. That's being used really whenever maybe a student might come across a locked PDF document where you can't normally get access to the text. That's why that option is still there. But for this gem, what I'm going to do instead is change it to actually convert it into a Microsoft Word document. And then all I need to do is click on Scan. Now the next stage straight away is the student will be asked to save it. Now this is a default with the scan that we've put in. It used to be they would just simply, it would scan it and it would pop up. But we find a terrible lot of end users were then closing that scan and forgetting that they hadn't actually saved the document. So this is where the default has been changed. So they simply give it a name. So I'll just simply call it Earth, just for quickness, and then click on Save. This is where now it is taking those 3 pages out of that PDF document. It runs it through, of course, the OCR scanning, which is incorporated in Read and Write, to produce then a new Microsoft Word document. Okay, there we go. So there is the 3 pages that I've chosen out of that PDF document. The important thing now, of course, is that it is in Microsoft Word. So I can select it, copy it, delete it, copy the images out of it if I needed it to, for example, do whatever it is that I need from this actual document that has been converted from a PDF to a Microsoft Word document. Very, very popular, very, very necessary, as I said, because so much information is being provided in PDF format to students. Right, so that's the scan, and as I said, go back to my presentation. That is gem number 7. Right, let's move on to gem number 8. And I've sort of cheated again because it is the voice note. The last time actually I explained how students can use a voice note to record their voice and insert it into a Microsoft Word document. And I suggested that particularly, of course, in the horrible circumstances that we've found ourselves in, it made the top 5 because of the fact that students were having to do a lot more studying and learning at home or in halls, and the communication, there was an obvious impact in the communication between the lecturer and the student, and I put forward the idea that the voice note can be used as an easy way for a student to communicate with their lecturer or indeed team members in a Microsoft Word document. So say, for example, the assignment maybe that they're working on, they can add in voice notes to that. This time I want to actually look at the ability to actually convert the voice note into a little MP3 and indeed insert it into a PowerPoint presentation. Because if you consider the stress that presentations can give your students, particularly if they're neurodiverse, it can cause a terrible lot of stress. And indeed, for some, it's just impossible to do. With the voice note, they can actually record themselves when they're very comfortable, when they're alone, when they're at home or whatever, not in that stressful environment, and indeed add it to their slides. They can still do the presentation, but quite simply without the stress. So again, let me just show you that. So I'm just going to minimize this presentation out of the way. And what I've got is a script, for example, that I might have prepared to add to a presentation. So whenever the student is ready, they just simply click on Voice Note. And whenever they're feeling nice and comfortable, totally unstressed, they simply click on the Record Audio. Good afternoon, everybody. This presentation is going to consider consumer buying behaviour and the importance of brand loyalty. And I'm just going to stop it there. So that was for slide 1. Now, last time whenever I showed it, I showed you the ability to actually insert it into the Microsoft Word document. This time for this gem, I'm going to click on Save. And then it quite simply asks you where you want to save it. So I'm going to just simply put it onto my desktop and I'll call it slide 1. But obviously for the student, they could well have created a folder where they can add them all into just to make it easier for them to find, and then click on Save. Quite simply tells me that it has been created and I can show it. But what instead I'm going to do is bring up my presentation and get that out of the way. So here's our introduction. Here's our first slide. So I want to add the little voice note to this presentation. So I'm going to click on Audio and Audio from my PC. Then all I need to click on is the little MP3 and insert it. And I can put it wherever I want on the screen. And as you'll see, whenever I click on the play, you'll be able to hear me doing the introduction to my presentation. Good afternoon, everybody. This presentation is going to consider consumer buying behaviour and the importance of brand loyalty. So, nice little tool that can be added to presentations to get rid of that stress that students will fall under whenever they need to do a presentation in front of anybody. So that is why Voice Note again makes my gems, and that's gem number 8. I'm going to move on to gem number 9, and I'll be honest with you, gem number 9, PDF reader, you probably think, well, you know, we always show this, or I always show this, but it actually was put forward from all of the votes from the previous series. So the last series that I actually provided, I actually asked, you know, what gem would you get added? And PDF reader was among those. So we often, you know, and I've already talked about how often PDFs are used in education. So it's not hard to see why this tool should be included. I have to say I love the new PDF reader compared to previous versions of Read&Write, quite simply because it means that whenever it opens up, you can use all of the support that's on the toolbar. Now, the thing about PDF reader is that we actually developed our own PDF reader. And the critical thing that students have to get used to is instead of just navigating to where they've saved the PDF or whatever, they have to click on PDF reader first. So they click on PDF reader first, and then they will be quite simply asked, where is, if I bring that over from my other screen, where is the PDF document that you want to read? So let's look at trends and application of machine learning in water supply network management. It's just popped up on my other screen, so I'm just going to pull it over there, make it a good bit bigger so you can see it better. Now, a couple of things to be aware of is that there's what's known as thumbnails, which are already showing actually on this document. I can show and hide them. So if you're wondering where I'm clicking, it's the bottom left-hand side, show thumbnails. Within the thumbnails then, you can see the headings, or indeed, my favorite is to show the individual pages within the PDF document, because it makes it much easier for a student to navigate to where it is that they want, for example, to read. Okay, so they can simply just click through to find the information that they want. So let's say they want to just read the conclusion. You can rotate the pages. That's important sometimes, particularly in regards to some PDFs might have diagrams that have been put vertical instead of horizontal, and need to change the rotation of it. They can print the PDF document. We still have the ability to do that if you still want a hard copy, as it were. You can search within the PDF document. Then I'm going to jump into the bottom and the middle. We can obviously zoom in and zoom out. Very important, particularly, of course, for those students maybe who have any sort of visual impairment. So I'll scroll down a little bit more so you can see the text that I'm after. Or we have some preset zooms that they could use if they want. And here we show what pages we've got and what page we're on. And again, we can navigate through using those little arrow buttons. Okay, whichever way we prefer. So let's have this read. And quite simply, by default, and I'm going to close the thumbnail so that you can spot this icon maybe a bit easier. By default, click to speak is switched on. I know it's switched on because there's a little purple underline underneath it. Click to speak does exactly what it says. You click and it speaks.
This paper presents an analysis of the application of machine learning techniques to the management of water supply networks. For this purpose,
now I clicked on stop, and I clicked on stop on the main toolbar, and that actually hides the real reason why I love PDF Reader so much, because now we have access to all of the tools that are on the main Read and Write toolbar. So if I turn it off, click to speak, because if I have that switched on, quite simply, if I go to select a word or something like that there, it's going to read it for me. But what I want to do, for example, might be to indeed highlight some text. So you can highlight within the PDF document, so they could be highlighting the most important information or information that they want to actually use, maybe in their essay and quote. I'm using different colors here, but you'll know very easily what highlighters, of course, are important for. So I'll highlight just one more little bit. And then, very importantly, of course, we have the ability to then collect the highlights. So with the collect highlights, it will now bring out those 3 bits of information that I've gathered and put it into a Microsoft Word document. And that ability to actually be able to use the support. So that's just the highlighters, but I could use a dictionary or any of the other support that's on the toolbar within a PDF document is the reason why PDF Reader makes my hidden gems. And that's gem number 9. Moving on then, gem number 10 is Audio Maker. Now, again, if anybody actually was able to attend the previous series on hidden gems, Audio Maker was in the list last time, but this makes a reappearance because, yes, it's very popular in the software. It converts text into an audio file to listen to when and whenever a student needs or wants, which is the way that we tend to show it. So, for example, they can use it to convert an article in a journal so that they need to read and convert it into a little MP3, put it onto their phone and listen to it on the way back to halls or whatever. And it reduces the stress of reading and making that task much more flexible. That might be the most common way we think about the Audio Maker. But how about the idea of using it as part of a presentation? So we've already mentioned presentations are used a lot in universities and can give a lot of your students stress, and there may indeed be some who cannot physically or mentally take part in presentations. With the Audio Maker, the student can write what they want to say, use the Audio Maker to convert it into an MP3, and then insert it into the presentation to be played when required. So again, I'm just going to very quickly show you that. So I'll skip out of this and I'll just close that PDF document. So we'll go back to the script. If you remember that we had used previously to get me, I actually recorded my voice reading this. But for the student who can't physically or mentally actually read out the text, what they can do is simply, again, I'll just select the first little bit for the first slide. So I'm going to select the text and click on the Audio Maker. So there's the little bit of text. I can choose where I want to save it. I'll just save it into my documents, but again, your student can well set up folders to make it easier for them to find. But this time I'm going to call it slide 1. Okay, and then simply click on Create MP3. So this time the software is converting that text using the text-to-speech that we've got within the software and making a little MP3. Again, I can click on Show to show where it is, but instead of doing that, what I'm going to do is go to my presentation again. Okay, I'm going to take out the previous recording of me, and instead this time what I'm going to do is actually insert, with the right tab, insert the audio that I have actually created using Read&Write. So that's in my documents. Oh, sorry, whoops. I just actually clicked on it there and click on Insert. Okay, and again I can put it wherever I want. And if I click on the little play, this time you'll hear Read&Write reading the script.
Good afternoon, everyone. This presentation is going to consider consumer buying behavior and the importance of brand loyalty.
So that's how easy it is for a student to actually add what they want to say to their presentation. Let me again go back to my presentation before I talk about that ability just a little bit more. The reason why that has actually made my top 10 is, indeed, I want to give you a quick story about a particular student. I'm not going to name them, of course, but he had cerebral palsy and his speech was very badly affected. And during his university, he wanted to get a placement with British Aerospace. Now, there was only actually 10 positions in that, so it was very, very sought after throughout the whole of the UK. And a requirement of that was to do a presentation. And what he did was exactly what I've shown you. So he wrote his presentation and then he used the audio maker to create MP3s and attach them to the slides within the presentation. And he was successful. He got that placement. And indeed, he's now actually graduated and is working as a computer programmer. So it can have a massive effect on your students just by actually suggesting different ways of using the tools for whatever it is that they need. Okay, so those are my 5 new tools that I've added in. Okay, so I did mention this at the very start. So we have lots of support. We have, of course, the Texthelp website. That's a good place to start because it will basically signpost you to all of these other places as well. We have a YouTube channel. Simply go to YouTube and search for Texthelp. Video tends to be the most common way now that people like to learn about our software. So that's why we've got a well-established YouTube channel with lots of different playlists for all of the different pieces of software. For those of you who want, say, let's a more formalized, structured way of learning the software, I would recommend the training portal. Now, the training portal is in the process of being brought back into the Texthelp website itself, but at the moment it is a Moodle site, so I'm sure most of you have heard of Moodle. So it will take you through step by step how to use the software with the addition of videos and also exercises if you want to complete those. We, of course, have our monthly webinar schedule, so please do keep a lookout for that. And technical support. Now, technical support not only is available, obviously, by phone or email, but there is also a tech support website which you can access from the main Texthelp website itself. But remember, of course, that any issues, if you need access to the software, if you need any copies, that this is the email address that you should use. It's dsa@texthelp.com, and one of the team will be able to get back to you. What I'm going to do is I'm going to just pop up the last slide because it has links to all of the other support that I mentioned. Thanks, everybody. Bye.